Welcome to Fortune Cookies Tarot. I'm Annabelle. I'm a tarot practitioner and psychic for over 35 years. This video is a little bit risky for me, a little interesting, but it was a viewer request, and it was to follow up on a video from Michael Knowles. You guys may know him. It's from 2022. He interviews a young lady, lovely young lady, Angela Ucci, who was into occult practices, including yoga. She actually was a yoga instructor after the death of her grandmother, and after realizing that these practices brought some demonic influence into her life, she converted back into Christianity and now is leading a very Christian life. I'll link the video down below so you guys can see where she's coming from. It is a part of a much larger interview, so you can find the other bits and pieces of it on the interwebs. But we're going to talk about this. We're going to see what kind of responses I get from it. I do want to stress here that this is going to be an open inquiry. Like, I would like to have a discourse in the chat on this one, in the comments below. I don't want to refute her truth, but I do want to explore the spiritual energies behind my practices, what she purports about the practices that I'm involved in, and how our intention may shape our experiences. As always, I'm going to use tarot and my psychic ability to gain insight, but I'm not going to pass judgment. I'm not going to vilify her or say that she's extreme or Michael Knowles is extreme. I do like everyone to have their own opinion, and I'll talk at the end of this a little bit about how my practice works in concert with Judeo-Christian practices. So we'll be right back. Welcome back, Tarot Maniacs, friends, fans, all that stuff. So let's start out with a little bit of information about yoga. I'm sure all of you have had some experience with yoga. It has been trending for some time as a practice of working out and staying fit, as well as staying mentally fit. Now, the introduction that Angela Ucci gives is that the holistic practice of New Age spirituality does allow for some demonic influences to come through. She does reference the, casting a circle, centering yourselves, giving protection. Michael Knowles does reference that after the tragic loss of his mother at a very young age, that he had even sought out some resources that may give him access to speaking to those that have passed on. And he has since learned since then that though sometimes those messages that are given are demons that are posing as our dearly beloved. So curious indeed. I don't think that that's an impossibility, but I do think if you are with a reputable vessel, I think that you can get solid answers. If you start getting weird answers, you should have a little bit of cognitive ability and see the red flags there. So a little bit about yoga. Yoga originated as an ancient Indian practice, which is physical, mental, and spiritual. It is part of a religious practice. The poses, asanas, are named, some of them are named after animals or sages. They're not spells per se, but symbolic postures used to focus and balance. Breath work, pranayama, and meditation are tools that will calm the mind, which is not unlike prayer or contemplative silence. So, I do find that there are some interesting connections For example, the burning of incense, so that our prayers will go up in the Catholic Church, the burning of incense to kind of clear the space or help you focus. Scent, as you know, and I've talked about this before, is one of our memory triggers. So, just like animals will find their mother through scent, mothers will find their young through scent. We will find that certain individuals have a more appealing scent than others. One of the things that I've always said to my daughter smells like cinnamon. I don't know why. Like, she could put on whatever perfume. I smell cinnamon on her and no one else smells it. So that's like a little scent on her that me as her mother, I smell. But other people, like, you'll meet a partner and you go, oh God, you just smell so good. And what are you wearing? Nothing. I'm not wearing anything. So scent is very, very important. We have some of our core memories are connected with scent. So it may be the scent of honeysuckle, or it may be the scent for me, Dr. Pepper. When I was a kid, I remember my first Dr. Pepper. I cracked it open at my grandparents' house in the summer and I could feel the bubbles going. I'm like, ooh, this smells really good. It doesn't smell the same anymore, but Dr. Pepper is a core memory for me. I was very young when I had that first Dr. Pepper. So, scent is very key. So I think it's very interesting that the burning of incense is a practice that is in the Catholic Church and also in some esoteric and New Age practices. So speaking of New Age practices, New Age and psychic practices, I guess New Age came around like in the 60s, 70s. I think that's kind of the dawn of it, where people started to get more into astrology, crystal healing, channeling, mediumship, and it became more mainstream, likely as a result of mass marketing, mass production, those kinds of things. So critics do argue that seeking altered states can open you to unknown influences. I am one of the people that I say, well, that holds true if you are using illegal substances, if you are drinking too much, those kinds of things. You can really, anytime you get yourself into a euphoric state, if you are not a strong enough individual, you can welcome in some things. So it is key to always remember this. Supporters do argue that these practices will foster connection and healing and intuition, and a connection to the higher power, God state, Gaia, universe, whatever you may call it. Many mediums, like me, do set protective intentions and boundaries when we are working spiritually. So, one of the things is when my clients, I'm working with them, I do try and keep them on track and say, well, we can look at this. We can look at the positive steps you can take to achieve this positive outcome, as long as it's for the greater good for you, good for other people around you, those kinds of things. So we do that. Do I run around the house and do circles and scare all the boogie away? Not every 5 minutes. But just like if I were to go into a church and pray, I do set the stage for a spiritual practice. Sacred spaces don't have to be exclusive to consecrated ground where churches are, or synagogues or temples or anything like that. Your sacred space should be your home. You should treat your home and your apartment and your places that you work as sacred spaces. You should clean them. It's one of the reasons why I'm against like shared workspaces at work, because I don't want somebody else's bad juju, bad attitude, bad nonsense bleeding over into my workspace. So I'm not a big fan of shared workspaces. So now let's see. I do want to talk a little bit about Angela Ucci. And again, I want to be like super, super respectful of her, because I think as long as you have some accountability to a good line of living, I think that you're okay. Individuals that are spell casting and doing things to harm or bind or restrict others, I don't think that that is a good practice, and I don't do anything like that myself. My position here as a spiritual guide is to help people live their best life, feel better, and do good with the time that they have been afforded. So I, and one of the things that she did say in the interview that I'm tagging below is that um, she, even though she was doing all of this manifestation and this practice, she wasn't feeling any better. She wasn't getting any relief from it, and she did liken it to a substance that um, you would have a tolerance that would build up and not be able to achieve that sense of peace. So I'm not sure where that went wrong. So let's take a look with some cards, and we're going to see what surrounded the negativity that was experienced that kind of changed her mind about this. So, and not her specifically, I'm sure she would not appreciate that. So we're going to look at like kind of the milieu of practice. So I'm going to bring up the cards, hit the like button. I'm also going to be using my psychic abilities on this. So let's giddy up, my friends. Hit that like button. Let's go. So what energy surrounds the negative connotations of new age and esoteric practices? What is this negative energy? So we're going to do a past, present, and then root energy. So what is it that makes people so uncomfortable? Past, progressive, present, and root energy. You ready, guys? The Hierophant. So this really is thwarting the conditions of standard, relatable religious practices. So people that have been raised in Christian Judeo cultures, they may not feel as confident about in introducing another practice, even if it's older. Because, like I said earlier, yoga is part of the spiritual structures that are in place in some countries. It is part of the religion. And I do think that that thwarts the, I hate to say, Eurocentric kind of way of thinking. Even though some of the religions will outdate the practices that we have in those Judeo-Christian religions. So I am one person. Of course I'm one person. I do think that there was a prehistory on this planet. I don't think that this is the first and first developed culture that we've had on this planet, the rememberable or recorded history thus far. The histories of Atlantis, the histories of Lemuria, the bits and pieces that we know. I do think that there were other cultures on this planet that have risen and fallen either due to a cataclysm or a circumstance that they caused possibly through war or through weaponry. So I don't think, and this is something I disagree with Greg. Greg thinks that, possibly there were other cultures and they were about as advanced as the Romans, but I think that they were much more advanced. Crystal technology, we do use it in our computer systems, crystal chips, quartz in watches, those kinds of things. So I do think that there is a certain memory that we have in crystals and things like that. So why not? Why is it that we can use crystals in different technologies now, but it's impossible to even conceive that they may have used them as a battery source, as an item that held information or data? It doesn't seem, really that fair. I think it's a little arrogant to assume that we are the ultimate of being ever on the planet. So let me know what you think down below about the evolutionary practices of the world. Do you think that there have been other cultures that have predated us? It's very interesting with the redating of the Sphinx. And I shouldn't say the redating because Dr. Robert Schoch did get into a lot of trouble with that. You can read his book on the Sphinx And he does think that it is a number of tens of thousands of years older than they actually think that it is. And that brings into question the dating of the pyramid and the structures there, which has been a hot debate with Zahi Hawass in Egypt, who is in charge of the antiquities there. I love him. I think that he's amazing. I like what he has to say. But what Dr. Robert Schoch has to say is very compelling, as is the evidence and the investigation. I shouldn't say the evidence, the investigation and resulting evidence from Graham Hancock. So, you can see all kinds of cool stuff. Russell Carlson has something to say about it. Bright Insight. I can't remember his name. The nice guy who runs Bright Insight, which is a YouTube channel as well. You can get some really, really compelling information on other cultures that have been here. So why do we have to be so arrogant to think that Christianity is the only process? Now, one of the things that Angela said was that there's a lot of self-help involved in this, and a lot of me. I have always said there is a higher spirit, there is a higher power, there is something greater than all of us that directs the traffic here. And I do think that our goal is to improve upon the spirit that we are until we can be a truly contributing source to God or universe or whatever you call it. I give it lots of different names because lots of people have different names for it. So, are there certain practices, that being said, are there certain practices in New Age and esoterica that are more risky than others? So, is there a danger? We can look at these step by step, and let's see. Is there a danger in the practice of yoga? Let's see. Are we making ourselves vulnerable to demonic forces? And I'm not being glib. I'm not being cheeky. Really want to know. So here's our intention: spiritual protection, education and knowledge, physical vulnerability, community and guidance. We're talking just about yoga. So here, intention. Intention, it is giving strength and influence to the self. It is giving the human, power over where their direction is heading. So spiritual protection, page in reverse. So I do think that when we deplete ourselves, we are somewhat vulnerable. And this indicates that maybe there is a little bit of vulnerability there. Spiritual protection, education and knowledge. With time, with patience, you will eventually discover some knowledge. I'm going to go to community and guidance before I go to that other one. Community and guidance, of course, we are going to have some differences. Again, I explained with cultures that have grown up in Judeo-Christian society, they are possibly going to have some issues with others because it is a foreign concept of having some input into the direction of your soul, not having God directing us every minute. So last one, physical vulnerability. This is the big question. This is it. Does yoga cause us to be physically vulnerable to demons? And I want to say this. I don't love yoga. The hangman, not learning from mistakes of the past. Let's clarify that a little bit. The star, it connects us with spirit. It connects us with God. And here, judgment, I do think that we still have the ability to be cognizant about our decision making when we are here. And I've always said this, the gods above give us free will here so that we can make the mistakes that we need to make, that we should make, that we can't, lessons that we should learn, interfacing with other people that maybe will teach us other lessons or confirm that we haven't learned a lesson. I do think that we have free will here. I also think that the universe does look out for us. I do think that there is a benevolent God that wants the best for us, his children, or her children, however you may frame that. But I think connecting to spirit in this sense, I think you do have to not do this lightly. So that is why I think the judgment card is in reverse, because we should not do this lightly. We should not just be blah, glib. I do readings on celebrities all the time. I do them as an example of how we can direct people's lives and help them live better, help them correct the path that they're on. Is that flip and glib? Some may say yes. I say no. I say it is, they are public figures and we can criticize, judge, and use them as examples as needed. That's unfortunately one of the things that happens when you go into a public forum. I am in a public forum and I deal with it myself. So I have critics, I have fans, I have friends, I have all sorts of stuff as a result of being a public figure. So be it. So let's take a look at some of the other esoteric practices. Let's look at tarot cards. Let's look at reading the tarot cards. It may be biased because intention. Ooh, wishes not fulfilled. Spiritual protection. Star in reverse. Education or knowledge. It is cataclysmic sudden information. Oh, Jesus. Hi, honey. You scared me. Oh, my daughter made me a cup of tea. She scared me. Thank you, my love. Oh, it's delicious. Delicious cup of tea. So physical vulnerability, the Page of Cups. There is some vulnerability here. Community or guidance. Four of Swords. It does go to sleep. It does go to sleep. So are tarot cards bad? Are they bad? Because this right now looks a little bad. So 9, wish fulfillment. So I do think that the exposure, the danger here of the intention is really in the hands of the reader. And of course, I'm going to say this, I'm biased, of course. Spiritual protection, Star in reverse, the danger. I do think that there are individuals that do not set their intentions as well as others. I really hope this isn't like reading on me. The education and knowledge is sudden and comes rushing in. That does happen when you are reading tarot cards. That is somewhat of the danger here. Danger of physical vulnerability with this Page of Cups in reverse. I do think that having some confusing emotions about it, having some confusing emotions about how this information rushes in, how the information is presented to us can be somewhat upsetting. I do think it can be. Initially, like when you start reading cards initially or early on in your practice, the messages that come through that are accurate, you sometimes miss them and you catch them later on. I had done a reading for a young man that I did not know when I was about 17. And I kept hearing a popping noise in my ear. And I thought it was because we were swimming. And I just kept doing it. He was really cute. And I was just, like, a little giddy because he was cute. But he was actually shot when he went back home to Florida, sleeping on someone's couch, and he unfortunately was unalived. But they had shot him in the ear, and that may have been the popping noise. I was not I had no reference for the sound of what a shooting would sound like. So it may have been that, but I remember thinking, I was swimming a few days ago, like maybe it's just water in my ear, but it had been a few days. So, community or guidance. I think that you have to put yourself into a state to truly get the guidance. So, do we have the danger in community or guidance? I think we do have to really kind of set ourselves into a state so we can allow that in. So let's go. My next set of questions. So when we engage in mediumship or spiritual development or tarot readings, psychic readings, those kinds of things, what determines whether we attract higher or lower energies? Because that's really the crux of my philosophy here, is that if you are intending for improvement and good, then you're on the right side of this. But if you are intending for the destruction or disruption of someone else's flow or life or story, then you're not in the right place. So, top card. What we attract when we act with fear, what we attract when we act with love, and key message from Spirit on discernment. It's going to be fun. We're going to take this one. Key message from Spirit on discernment is that nostalgic good feeling. You are going to experience either an unsettling feeling or a good feeling. And that's one of the things, like when I got my Aleister Crowley Thoughts deck, I had friends that were very much into Aleister Crowley. I knew a little bit of the stories about him. I was kind of indifferent. He is a very interesting character. He gets a big mark in the no column because he wasn't nice to animals. He wasn't nice to cats. You guys know I love cats. So I think when I was around some of those people that were, let's call it dabbling in some of the esoteric stuff, because they wanted power, they wanted that dark magic to happen. It felt very different from the practices that I have here, where everything is for the good. I surround my house with light and incense and crazy cats for protection. I do that so that there is a warm and good feeling here. And my barometer for that is when people come into my home and they go, "Oh, it's so comfortable and cozy here, and I just feel so great when I'm here." Is that a magical substance that is kind of a fake? I don't think so. I think a happy home is a happy home, and people will feel that as they come through your door. So let's look at this. What do we attract when we act with fear or poor intent? We attract chaos. Five of Swords. Five of Swords is drama and chaos and fighting and resistance. Think about grinding gears. What we attract when we act with love. And I have the Six of Pentacles in reverse. So interestingly enough, the Six of Pentacles, when it is upright, is about generosity, but it's also about inequity between parties. So there is a wealthy party and a poor party. You can see it right in the card. So is this the equalizer? Do we become the equalizer when we act in love? Let me know what you think in the comments about that, because I am curious about that. I'm curious about your thoughts. So this young woman, Angela, she had lost her grandmother, and that was one of the reasons. It was very traumatic for her. It was one of the reasons why she got involved in some esoteric practices. As I said, Michael Knowles had said that he had a brief interest when he had lost his mother at a very young age. And lots of people will do that. I'm contacted regularly by individuals who have lost a family member, lost a dearly beloved, things like that. And, what can you do for me? Now, I don't brand myself as a medium. I do get messages from individuals that have passed on, but I don't get them spontaneously and call up people and say, "Hey, your brother Bob wanted you to know." That is a little wacky. Even if I did get a message like that, I would not act upon it because it's intrusive into another person's life. So if people are asking me for it, it really is a very subjective decision. Some people I will say, okay, we'll sit down, we'll have a session. Some people I'll say, no, I just don't do that. And I do not advertise it. So I have been doing it more and more lately. You saw it in the Rockstar series that I did. But, I do have a very negative story about a friend who's in a bereavement group. And they asked me why so many of them had been contacted by mediums. And for thousands of dollars, they were offering to locate their spouse, their child, their, parents, whomever. And I think that that's a little troubling, So individuals that have trauma, are they more susceptible to the urging of demons to come over to open up portals and channels and things like that? So personal trauma, does it open up for some individuals to bring in the darkness? Wheel of Fortune and the Three of Cups. These are very positive cards. I think that if you choose to go to a dark place cognitively, I think that you can bring in some trouble. This tells me that in cases of trauma, that the Almighty brings down a hand to provide comfort and care for those that need it. Again, I'm going to underscore, I believe in a benevolent God. I do not believe in a, fire and brimstone God. I don't think that it's fire and brimstone. I really do think that God wants what's best for us. God wants us to improve and live well. There's no, ashes in sackcloth. Like, you got to crawl on your knees through broken glass to prove yourself. So I do think that. So what practices or intentions can help seekers engage with spiritual tools like tarot, yoga, mediumship safely and meaningfully? What can people do to make that happen safely? I do think that intention, if you need to do a protective ritual, some people say cast a circle, take a minute just to center yourself and really focus on your intention of helping, of being there to guide people along. I think that that is a good way to kind of lay the groundwork. But some people may light incense, some people may hold a crystal. I have lots of crystals. My good friend Alicia Wicker sells them. They're fabulous. I have my Otter Spirit ambassadorship, beautiful crystals. I mean, if we're going to go all the way with esoteric practices are no good, we got to include all kinds of stuff. We got to include pendulums, like that are just hanging around here. We got to include dice. And how about my lucky pig, my little three-legged lucky pig? We'll include him too. I do think that we have to be very careful about condemning any one thing, because then we potentially run into the problem of condemning all things. There's nothing scarier in the world than a crucifix. I'm sorry. Like, I think a crucifix is pretty alarming imagery. But what is the best? What practices can individuals do? What intentions can help them seek positive interaction with spiritual tools? So there you go. King of Pentacles. Know your shit. Know your shit. Know what you're getting into. And the Lovers, have a swim buddy. So when I started to learn how to read tarot cards, there was a lovely lady named Flo Higgins who unfortunately has gone on. But Flo Higgins was delightful. She owned a new age shop, and she directed me to some interesting books, some interesting lessons. She introduced me to Madame Blavatsky, which I understand there is a lot of controversy with Madame Blavatsky. A lot of people have very strong opinions that she is not actually as positive as one would think, but she had a lot to say about Lemuria, which I think was pretty cool. I like the idea of Lemuria, and I hope that some of the things that we know about it are true and are cool. So I do think knowledge, research, information, and having some resources that we can turn to are always good practices. I am a teacher of cartomancy, a psychic coach, psychic readings, those kinds of things. So I try to be that resource for my students. In fact, I did get a psychic score from one of my students today because she did predict that Diddy wasn't going to go very, very far into the guilty verdict, and she was right. I had to give her that, so it's pretty awesome. I'm very proud of her, Debbie. I'm talking about you. So, that being said, I think we're going to wrap up the cards there. I believe spiritual tools like yoga, even though I don't like yoga, tarot, mediumship, they're not inherently good or evil. It can go either way, like a candle, they can light your way, or if left unattended, it can cause some harm. It really comes down to your intention, your preparation, and your discernment. Again, I want to say if individuals are saying, well, I, want to destroy the life of so and so, not so good. That's not good if you're doing it in an energetic way or if you're doing it in a practical way. The dictates of the Judeo-Christian religions, I think, are very good to follow. The 10 Commandments are a great place to start if you have no religious upbringing. Honor thy father and mother. Don't covet your neighbor. Like, don't covet your neighbor's wife or husband. Don't steal. Don't be a jerk. Basically, if we could have like one commandment, like don't be a jerk, is probably the best one. But I honor Michael Knowles' experience and Angela Uchi's experience. I do. Mine is a little bit different, but I think that is what makes the world so interesting. My goal every day is to improve the lives of others, to give them hope on the days that they don't have hope, to give them an alternate perspective. And I do this when I'm reading, I do this with my friends, I do this with my family, I do it with my children, I do it with my pets. And I think that if that is your goal and that is your mission statement, your primary objective, how can that be wrong? Some may say this is a deck of cards with just some pictures on it, but the pictures have meaning. Some could also say that the Bible is just a bunch of words that's put together. It's a story. There is so much controversy now with the Book of Enoch when it was discovered. People that were purists said, no, the Book of Enoch has nothing to do with the Bible, but doesn't it? It is part of that scripture. And we can't just toss that out because it tells some different stories there. There's more to, I could not delineate everything that was said in that interview, but I honor her experience. I honor Michael Knowles' experience, and I understand how grief can make us seek different answers. One of the reasons that we saw the rise of mediumship and seances after the Spanish flu was because people were seeking to know what was on the other side. They were in grief and they were looking for answers. We saw the same thing during our pandemic that we all experienced. So I think that the curiosity of the spirit realm is something that we explore periodically, intensely in this human experience, and possibly in the experiences that we've had before in prehistory. So let me know what you think. And I hope that I was respectful both Angela and Michael in this video. I'm not trying to go to war with anyone or um, do anything like that. This was a viewer request, and I wanted to honor that and explore this topic in a sensitive and open way. I am a psychic, but I'm also a regular person. I walk around on two legs just like you guys. So, I did want to take a look at it, but let me know what you think. And I'll see you guys in the future.